Hello again.
Hello,
You
everyone.
quick. Everyone jumped on that meeting. I thought I was quick to get back on the meeting.
We're just going to wait
Is everybody?
for all participants of the board and administration to join us. Thank you for those who have been waiting. This is the Board of Education meeting. Just going to wait a moment for the other trustees I know are coming. I'm going to wait one more moment for additional trustees to join the meeting. All right, well, hello everyone and welcome to the Board of Education meeting. It's Wednesday, April 7th, 2021. We called to order previously at 6:30 when we went into executive session. So welcome to trustees and to those of you who are also joining us this evening. I'm going to hand the meeting over now to Dr. Henning Piedmont for any announcements.
Sure, thank you very much, Lauren. In the interest of having our tenure recommendations, I'm going to defer my comments so that we can get to that portion of the program as quickly as possible, and that we move that portion up in the agenda to the beginning of the meeting so that the families and the prospective tenure candidates can participate at the beginning of this program rather than waiting until the end. Thank you very much.
Great. So we will we'll resume where we were at the beginning of the meeting and the agenda for announcements and administrative comments after the tenure recommendations. So we're going to, if you're in the agenda, go down to Personnel D, and we're very pleased to have a number of teachers and an administrator this evening recommended for tenure. So please, if you could go ahead, Dr. Henning Piedmont, with bringing us for those candidates.
Sure, Ms. Berman. I'm going to turn the program over to Ms. Kazes, who's going to start with the first candidate who's being recommended for tenure tonight, and that's Assistant Principal John Decamps. And then she will, along with Ms. Sullivan or Mr. Stewart, combine the recommendations among the regular educators as well as the special educators. So Ms. Kazes, go right ahead. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It is truly my pleasure to be here tonight. It's one of the best nights of the year to share with you the wonderful educators that we have at Hillside and to make their recommendation for tenure. So tonight, my first candidate for tenure is the yin to my yang. When we hired John Decamps as the assistant principal of Hillside, one of the criterion was to find someone who was able to fill the gaps that I had in leadership. And John was the perfect match. He has been an absolute professional in every sense of the word. And there are so many areas that John has added to our school, and I'd like to share a few of them with you. The first area that John has been an absolute dream to work with is in the area of technology. As you know, John is very, very quick when it comes to learning technology and really utilizing technology. And John, last year, his technology expertise really came into play when we went into this pandemic. And very quickly, John was able to support our team in the distribution of Chromebooks, in making sure that all of our staff members had the tools that they needed. He even assembled a distance learning technology team where he found our teachers that were highly skilled and worked together with them to create a distance learning Google site to share best practices. He brought people together in many ways when it came to technology and was really there as a problem solver. Anytime there was a technology question, I knew that I could forward it over to John, and John would be able to either have the answer or find the answer. And he's been a wonderful resource in that regard. John also has been terribly creative when it comes to technology. And we've had the luxury of having John create a virtual tour for our incoming families this year. He's also created a kindergarten orientation site so that our new kindergarten families coming in this year had the opportunity to have an orientation. And our claim to fame was our morning and afternoon announcements, which John did with a smile every day, thinking about all the things that he could share with our community that would continue to be a reason for all of us to feel connected and to come together. So that was, one of the areas that I think John has really been a star at Hillside. Another area that has been amazing having John as my partner is in the area of PBIS. John came to Hillside with a background in PBIS, and we really worked together on many of the aspects to improve the culture of the school. One of the things that John took the lead on early on was identifying clear rules and communicating them for all of our students and faculty, creating signage that was hung all around the school so that everyone knew exactly what those expectations were. And by doing so, everybody was able to be set up for success. One of the other areas that John has worked very hard is to be able to recognize the great things that are happening through positive referrals to families. So as teachers are recognizing students who demonstrate our core values of respect, courage, and curiosity, John has been able to reach out to families and let them know these wonderful things that their students are doing at Hillside. And that's been a very special aspect of his work. A third piece that John has been working on this year is with our MTSS team. We've been very focused on attendance, working to make sure that all of our children are attending school consistently, because what we know is being in school matters. And John has been at the forefront working in partnership with our teachers to ensure that every child has access to a wonderful education. As you all know, John is also a highly collaborative individual. He has been a partner in our safety meetings, in all things Hillside. Our teachers and teaching assistants and monitors and aides and all of our staff respect John because he is someone who will get in there side by side and do whatever job needs to be done. And that is a really amazing attribute of John's. Another thing that John does, and perhaps the greatest web of work, is the scheduling. And we've always been very proud of John and his scheduling abilities, but this year especially, he's created about 6 schedules. We've had many different varieties, from the 2-day consecutive to the AM PM to the AM PM with kindergarten in, AM PM with kindergarten and first grade in, and now we're moving into the all in. And with each schedule, John takes it on with the same kind of positivity and know-how. And he's been a true master at master scheduling. So we are very grateful for that. John, as you know, is also highly visible. He's visible in the school, walking in the halls, getting into classrooms, seeing students. And he's also visible in the community. Although this year has been a unique year, John has always been able to participate in the activities and the experiences that are important, whether they are, family dance night, a school concert, or perhaps his most favorite experience at the Septa Carnival, where he was in the dunk tank. So that was a very special day for John, because he's a very special part of our community. At the end of the day, when I think about John, I think about his partnership and his leadership at Hillside. What I know is that John will continue on to be a fabulous leader because he's got the attributes. He has responsibility, he has intelligence, he has integrity, and he's a highly collaborative leader. And I know that we are very lucky at Hillside to have John, and we will continue to be so. So it is a true pleasure for me to recommend John to the Board of Education for tenure this evening.
And this, what we'll do is give John an opportunity to come on and just acknowledge all those wonderful words that you just said, Amy, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amy. And thank you to the Board of Education, Valerie, Melissa, the staff at Hillside, students, and the surrounding community. Hastings is dear to my heart. I've grown a lot here. I've been provided the opportunities to be a leader, and I couldn't have done it without every stakeholder that's been involved from day one. And, I think for me personally, that has really come out over the last year during the pandemic. It's definitely a privilege for me to be a leader within the district and at Hillside specifically. And to Amy, it's a true partnership between us. I think, leading our staff together, it's an honor to arrive at Hillside and be able to lead with you each day.
Thank you, John. I don't know if there's any board member wants to wait at the very end after we finish. And I do know John has to pop off. He's doing double duty. So if this would be the time if you wanted to in the next couple of minutes. Unfortunately, he does have to pop off.
I hope we can vote before John has to leave.
I think we will. I want to preemptively congratulate you, John Decamps. I think, this year at Hillside has certainly been a challenge for every staff member, for every student, for every teacher, and certainly having your leadership alongside Amy's has been, steadying the ship. So certainly the board recognizes what has occurred at Hillside, and of course it couldn't have occurred without you.
Thank you, Lauren.
I just want to chime in and say what a pleasure it was to have been able to been there when you first interviewed for the position, John. And it gives me such sincere pleasure to have you come full circle and now be granted tenure. I can't think of somebody who inspires me so much in terms of your commitment to your school, to your students, to our community. And you really are a tribute and embody so many of the traits which really make Hillside the high-performing school that it is. So thank you so sincerely, one as a board member, most importantly as a mom. You're really just terrific. We're so lucky for the time that you served us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia.
I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
Valerie, should we continue with the other teacher candidates?
I think if you could vote, that would be great.
Absolutely. So we'll pull out John Decamps from tenure recommendations, personnel D. So that would be item number 2. Is there a motion to approve the tenure recommendation for John Decamps?
So moved.
Second.
And second? All in favor? Congratulations, John.
I'm
Well,
sorry, who was second?
awesome.
Thank you.
Well deserved.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Take care, John. Congratulations.
Thank you. So now we can continue with candidates 1 and then 3 through 8.
Okay, so I apologize, Lauren. I don't have the agenda right in front of me. Is there an order that you want me to go in, or
No,
just?
it's fine. I just want to make sure that we're covering each of the candidates. So I can list the names. It's Michael Chappas, Dana Finsmith, Nicole Jossinger, and pardon me if I'm saying anyone's name incorrectly, Elise Malone, Caitlin O'Sullivan, Megan Reyna, and Carmela Tedeschi.
Perfect. So I'm going to begin. I'm going to speak first on behalf of Nicole Jossiger. Nicole Jossiger is a reading specialist at Hillside, and we are very, very fortunate to have found Nicole. Nicole is a consummate professional, and Nicole has really made it a priority to collaborate with teachers and to ensure that every single student is very carefully watched to ensure that they are going to be a great success. Nicole has a very strong way of instruction where she moves the lesson very fluidly through. She begins every lesson with students reading eyes on print. And that's an important aspect because what we know is that students, the more they read, the more they will be able to read. The number of words, the number of minutes count. And Nicole always values that as a part of her lesson. She also uses a multisensory approach to teaching, whether students are using their bodies kinesthetically or looking at visuals or listening, but she's always making sure that she's giving students every opportunity to be successful. She'll sit right next to a student, and of course in COVID with a barrier, but she'll sit right next to a student to be able to support a student and make sure that each and every child has the best opportunity for learning. One of the things I think is her greatest accomplishment is the creation and the running of our MTSS team. Nicole happens to be very technologically savvy, and Nicole has been a leader in creating our network that we are using in order to manage all of our MTSS information. So this includes our team's data collection, as well as a number of different sheets and forms that each grade level uses as they put interventions in place. Nicole also has the know-how to be able to take that information and then roll it over year to year so that new teachers have the access of being able to see past teachers' interventions so that they can see what has worked and what has not worked so that they can try different things. So Nicole has been instrumental in that work. Nicole has truly been a leader at Hillside when it comes to professional learning. She's served in faculty meetings to lead teachers through reading support. She's even served at our intervention cafe where she's been a resource for teachers, and that's been very valuable. Just this year, Nicole and her colleague together exited 25 readers from MTSS, and that's just an example of the good work that they do every day. It is our luck to have found Nicole Jossiger, and I know that she has many years ahead of her of wonderful, wonderful instruction for our students, and we will see many children growing as readers because of Nicole. So once again, I'm very pleased to be able to present Nicole Jossiger as a candidate for tenure.
And I believe we wanted to do the same for each candidate, allow them to speak and then have the board to vote.
So if Nicole Jossiger is in attendance in the meeting, Melissa Delabrera, you can make her accessible to speak if she'd like to.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Amy, and thank you to the Hastings community. It's been an absolute pleasure of mine to be working at Hillside alongside a wonderful, wonderful group of educators. I feel that I'm also learning every single day, and I absolutely love teaching reading every single day to all of my students. So this is a very exciting moment for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Is there a motion to approve the tenure recommendation for Nicole Jossiger?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Congratulations, Nicole.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Nicole.
Okay, so our next candidate for tenure is Caitlin O'Sullivan. Caitlin is a first grade teacher at Hillside, and Caitlin came to us as a kindergarten, well, she came to us as a special education teacher, and she worked for a year in kindergarten and special education. Then we transitioned her over to the general education side in first grade, and she has been a tremendous asset to our first grade team. Caitlin is always learning, always growing, and always looking for new information. And one of the things that I think is most worthwhile to share is Caitlin's resiliency and her ability to excel even under the most challenging circumstances. We had a situation here where Caitlin and I had an observation scheduled. And the day before the observation was supposed to happen, Caitlin ended up being in a quarantine situation. And I said to Caitlin, it's up to you. We can reschedule or we can go ahead and do the observation. And Caitlin shared, let's just do it. And I will tell you that I've seen instruction. Our teachers have done a phenomenal job with remote instruction, but Caitlin further blew my mind when I was able to do this observation and see the way that she used these breakout rooms to be able to confer with students and to really give every single learner the best opportunity, even in a remote environment, which essentially is what's so remarkable. The fact that even in these challenging times, our teachers have figured out ways to not miss a beat, to still give our children the very best that they possibly can. And Caitlin really epitomized that. So her instructional abilities, her willingness to see every single child for who they are and where they are, and be able to help grow them gently and with empathy are some of the most wonderful traits of Caitlin as a teacher. Her students love being in her classroom. There's a sense of community, and she's terribly flexible. I will share with you the fact that Caitlin has moved her classroom multiple times this year, and each time with a smile. And it's been a challenging year, yet Caitlin has been able to persevere. I'd also like to share with you the fact that Caitlin not only is a phenomenal teacher, but she's a phenomenal asset to our Hillside team. She's one who doesn't only have classroom responsibilities, she takes on responsibilities that are past the classroom. She's been involved in many of our committees, our curriculum committee, our PBIS committee, our building leadership team, our Earth Day committee, and even our Better Together committee, a committee of teachers that got together because they wanted to just be able to spread joy in our school. Caitlin is a true joiner, and she's someone who I know will continue to grow our school in positive ways. Caitlin even has demonstrated her commitment through being a varsity girls lacrosse and soccer coach. And that's been a way that she's been able to really give back not only to our school community, but also to the community at large. I'm very, very confident that Caitlin is going to be an educator who never stops growing. She's one who's always seeking new information, new ideas, and continually collaborating with others. And I'm very confident in the fact that we are going to have a wonderful, wonderful teacher with us at Hillside for many years. So once again, it is my pleasure to recommend Caitlin O'Sullivan for tenure.
And if Caitlin's here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Amy, so much, and the rest of the members on the board. 4 years ago has gone very fast, and I felt so lucky 4 years ago to be hired in this district, and I still to this day walk in every day, and I feel very lucky to be a part of this special community. I love all of my students. I love all of the people that I work with, and I'm just really excited for my future at Hillside. So thank you all again.
Thank you, Caitlin. Congratulations.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Budget vote.
And thank you, Amy. Is there a motion to approve the tenure recommendation for Caitlin O'Sullivan?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Oops.
All in favor? Congratulations, Caitlin.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so this brings us to our next candidate for tenure, Michael Chappis. Michael is a physical education teacher at Hillside, and Michael is a true example of a team player. There are unbelievable things that I can say about our physical education team because they truly understand what it is to be on a team. And Michael is a perfect example. He's a perfect fit for Hillside. Michael is always willing to jump in any situation in order to help a student. He is one who loves the classroom, loves collaborating with his colleagues. And when you walk into Michael's classroom, you don't always know what you're getting because it may or may not be Michael's voice that you hear. You may have a pirate, you may have, another being. Michael's voices keep the kids engaged. He's silly. He does the dances with the kids. He loves his job, and it just oozes out of him. You can see in his instruction that his instruction is about all kids. It's one of my most favorite things. I was not an athlete as a child, but I know that if I was in Michael's class, I would feel successful. And I think that that is a really important attribute of a PE teacher, one who can make sure that every single child can be successful. I just had the opportunity to visit Michael's class the other day, and I shared with him the fact that they were doing a track and field event. And in this event, every single child had the opportunity to be a great success. And that's one of the best things about Michael, that he makes every child feel like $1 million. Michael also works highly collaboratively with his other colleagues in PE and also with the colleagues in the school, with all the other teachers in the school. He also works together with our counterparts at the middle and high school, and he coaches sports there as well, serving the district in many ways as well. Michael's professional responsibilities, I think, are worth mentioning. Michael is working right now toward his administrative degree. And as a result, I have the good fortune of having Michael as an administrative intern at Hillside. So what this means is that John and I have another partner, and Michael has been another partner for us. Michael is always available to jump in. Even before he was doing his internship, he was always available to jump in. And some of the things that make Michael extremely special are his willingness to support arrival and dismissal, which is our most challenging times of the day because we want to make sure that all of our children arrive safely and leave safely. And Michael is always there to jump in to lend a hand. When it came to assemblies, which I know we haven't had assemblies of late because of the pandemic, but Michael was always ready to set up and welcome everyone into the all-purpose room, his learning space. It was like walking into his home. He was there to greet you at the door and help you find your spot. And Michael was also a problem solver, trying to figure out what was the best way for us to be able to get all of our students into the all-purpose room and then out again. Always willing to flex and make changes. Nothing is ever a problem to Michael. In these COVID times, Michael and his colleagues worked to help design our spaces for learning outside, as well as the spaces for recess time so that our students could stay cohorted. And this took a lot of time and a lot of imagining because he had to figure out many different situations that would work for all of our teachers and all of our children. And together they created schedules and clear sign-outs so that teachers would have the opportunity to make sure they get outside with their children. In addition, I know that many of you have seen Michael. He's a TV personality, and Michael and his colleagues were willing to make videos for our return to school. So many of our back to school videos featured Michael showing children how to wear a mask, how to walk in the hallway, and so on. Michael has also served on many of our committees, and most recently, our reentry committee, which has been a huge undertaking. Our team started meeting last summer in June, and the number of hours that we've spent together as we've continued to revise and flex to be able to reopen in multiple different ways. Michael has been a wonderful asset to our team. As I shared with you, he is working toward his administrative program and he is interning with us. I know that one day Michael will make a wonderful leader, but right now we are very, very grateful to have him as a teacher at Hillside. And it is truly my pleasure to recommend him for tenure here in Hastings.
And Michael is here.
Yes, thank you, Amy, and congratulations to everybody else that's here getting tenure: John, Laura, Carmela, Nicole, Elise, of course, Megan, and Dana. And I'm also very happy to see that Shai has made it. If there's anybody that I'm happy is here, it's Shai. So hello, and thank you everybody for all your kind words, and thank you for being here.
Congratulations, Michael.
Is there a motion to approve the tenure recommendation for Michael Chappis?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Congratulations, Michael.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, and the final teacher that I'm going to be speaking on behalf of tonight is Elise Malone. Elise Malone came to us a number of years ago as a leave replacement teacher, and I believe it was my first year at Hillside when I interviewed her, and I knew that Elise had something special. And she came in as a leave, and she was a first grade leave, and the teachers kept coming to us to tell us, we can't lose this one. She, as a young, brand new teacher, was bringing new ideas and innovation to the teachers, and nobody wanted to lose Elise. So luckily for us, we had a kindergarten opening and we hired Elise. Elise is a wonderful, wonderful educator, and the children that are in Elise's classroom are very, very lucky. She has very clear procedures and routines. Her instructional environment is just a place of joy. It is truly an unbelievable kindergarten experience when you walk into Elise's classroom. You may see her dressed up in a solar system dress, or in Chicka Chicka Boom Boom with letters all over her, where she actually falls down to the floor. You may see Elise in a very fancy outfit where she gets dressed up when she's teaching her children how to fancy up their writing. But she makes the kindergarten classroom a true place where children can thrive and grow. One of my most favorite experiences with Elise was when she was getting married. As a young teacher, Elise decided that why shouldn't her class have the opportunity to attend her wedding? So instead of having them physically go to her wedding, she brought the wedding to them. And she had her fiance at the time come to school, and her students decorated her wedding dress. Literally, she wore a white dress and they decorated it. She had them create the aisle that she walked down. She had multiple people officiating it. There was a priest and a rabbi and a justice of the peace. Everyone had a role, and she invited her students and their families, and it was a wonderful experience, a wonderful community building experience. Elise is all about community. You walk into her classroom and you don't know what you're going to find. I've walked in and they're walking around like zombies, and Elise is the loudest one. I've walked into her classroom and the kids are all in tents because they've had a reward where they've got to have the opportunity to create tents and read in tents. Her instruction is stellar, and her experience makes the kindergarten experience just magical. Elise is also someone who is not only a wonderful classroom teacher, but also a wonderful school contributor. Elise has been a part of many of our committees. She was one of the originators of our Better Together committee, working to make sure that Hillside is a better place and that people have the opportunity to be recognized. She created a staff shout out board so staff could recognize each other for special things. She's created a Google Classroom with tips for staff members. She served on our building leadership team, on our ELA committee. She's been a part of our book clubs. And I believe last year she created an amazing kindergarten orientation video and other videos. She's very skilled technologically and continues to amaze us. So you may see Elise, back at our family dance night, grooving with the kids. on the dance floor once we're all allowed to come back together. But I can assure you that you will see Elise for many years to come, because she is someone who is truly committed to her students and to our community. And it is truly my pleasure, once again, to recommend Elise Malone for tenure in Hastings.
Elise is here.
Yep, thank you so much, Amy. I really appreciate all those kind words, and thank you to all the members of the board. I can say from the first time I walked through the doors at Hillside, I felt a sense of community and family, and I just felt like I really belonged there. And I am so grateful that Amy gave me the opportunity to become a teacher at Hillside, and I'm looking forward to many more wonderful years at Hillside to learn and grow. So thank you so much, everyone.
Is there a motion to recommend tenure for Elise Malone?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Congratulations, Elise.
Congratulations, Elise.
Thank you.
Good evening,
I
everybody.
believe Ms. Sullivan is here.
Yes, I'm here with Testa Stewart as well. So we're going to
Great.
speak about the 3 special education candidates that we're going to recommend this evening. We're going to start with Miss Dana Finsmith. Dana is duly certified in both childhood education as well as special education. And I just want to point out that when we were talking about Dana's tenure, her general education collaborative teacher came to us and said, you need to put in the report that Dana Finsmith has changed me as a teacher. And this is a veteran teacher. This is somebody that has been teaching for years. And Dana, as a new teacher, has come in and changed her whole way in which her co-teacher teaches, which I think is so impactful of how, one person can make such a difference. She is very involved in planning. Her and her co-teacher, they include the teaching assistant. They have a 1-to-1 aide in their classroom. They plan everything collaboratively, replan, revisit, replan again, even if that means midday, even if that means they have to do it during their lunch because something didn't work in the morning and they want to change it and fix it and to do it in the afternoon. They are constantly assessing and making sure that everything is going best for the children. Her classroom environment, and I don't want to say her because I feel like it's a team, her and her co-teacher, it is a place where children thrive. She is definitely somebody that when Tessa and I have a situation that needs perhaps a special touch, we go to Dana with and say, can you help us with this certain situation? Can you help us support us through a challenging moment? She's a great problem solver and always looks at the positive side of things. Even when things are rough, she always finds a way to find the positive in every single situation, every single child, regardless of what is happening. She's a smile on all the faces of the children, even if they're not feeling a smile at that time. She is meticulous in designing an optimal learning environment. And again, I don't want to say just she, because I do think that she is a true collaborator and co-teacher.
I fully agree with everything Laura said. Dana is reliable, flexible, and a dependable partner in supporting students. I think Laura said it, she is our go-to as far as if we really need support. She's probably the first person in Hillside I would think about to support, any student, specifically any student with an IEP or any student at all, but she is, top notch. And I wholeheartedly support, her and her journey as she progresses along.
So it's both of our honors, Tessa and I, to recommend Dana Finsmith to tenure.
And Dana is here.
Hi. It has been such a pleasure and a privilege to work at Hillside and just be a part of the Hastings community. And I want to thank you, Dr. Henning-Piedmont, Ms. Semensky, the Board of Education, Laura, Tessa, Amy, and John, This really means so much to me, and I truly look forward to spending the rest of my teaching career with the amazing students at Hastings. So thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
Is there a motion to approve the tenure recommendation for Dana Finsmith?
So moved.
Second.
All in-
Last,
All in favor? Congratulations, Dana.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Our next candidate that Tess and I will be speaking about is Miss Megan Reyna. I think it's important for us to share her certifications right off the bat because they are quite unique. She is a certified in speech and language disabilities K-12, English to speakers of other languages K-12, and French 7-12. So she is quite eclectic in her abilities, and it definitely shows when she's working with her children. She has worked both at Hillside and at Farragut, Megan is somebody that has a unique skill in being able to do an assessment and evaluate children and really pinpoint the deficits and then use the weaknesses to figure out how that's going to support the deficits. I mean, find the strengths that are going to support the weaknesses and the deficits, to really looking at the whole child. And her reports and her evaluation ability is it's stellar. It really is. And it's not easy to write reports and evaluate children. It's a skill that she is excellent at. She really looks at children's learning as a journey and can see the trajectory of where they're going to be going. And again, focuses on the whole student, the picture of the whole student, which often I think is always important to maintain when we're looking at children with IEPs, because we can often get stuck in their needs, and we really always have to make sure that we're focusing on all of the strengths as well. She collaborates with classroom teachers and really looks to see how she can connect her work with that of what's happening in the classroom. So she joins their Google Classrooms, their individual Google Classrooms, so that she can then bring in the vocabulary and the content into her individual sessions with her students so that it transfers over. She's very positive with her students. She's very calm, just very even and calm and happy, but I've never seen her lose her cool or just get flustered. She's just a really well-rounded speech and language pathologist, just well-rounded person.
Yeah, no, I once again wholeheartedly agree. Her expertise is invaluable. She has, definitely used data to drive her decisions while she's been here. Megan has also been, another collaborative thought partner. In any situation we have where it involves, an expertise involving speech and language, or, if it's I know when I first got here, we were looking at a study about language acquisition as opposed to learning disabilities. Megan was heavily involved in that process. So she has been, well-rounded and supportive during her time here.
So Tessa and I are both truly honored to be able to recommend Megan Reyna to tenure position.
And Megan is here.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for your recommendation, Laura, Tesfa, and the administrators at both Hillside and Farragut, because I've had the pleasure of not being able to work in one but two schools, and with all the educators and professionals at those schools. And so I feel just very lucky to have been able to interact with so many people and touch so many students' lives and see their progress. So I really look forward to many more years of being able to serve in this capacity. So thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
Is there a motion to approve the tenure recommendation for Megan Reyna?
So moved.
And a second? All in favor? Congratulations, Megan.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Megan.
The final candidate that Tessa and I will be recommending tonight is Ms. Carmela Tedeschi. She is certified in childhood education, students with disabilities, and literacy, which is a really well-rounded, also special education teacher. She again values collaboration, as that's the only way that an ICT team is really going to work, and uses her collaboration time to make sure that she's developing really lessons that are differentiated. And I see her as, I always refer to that bowling video. She is somebody that teaches down to by Shelley Moore that we've shown at several board meetings. But she really makes sure that she's teaching to hit all of those pins, and develops lessons in a manner that's going to be able to do that. She has a great ongoing communication with her families and really does see it as a true partnership working with the students and the families. We received an email that we were copied on, and it just from a parent that said, "Thank you for everything, as always, Carmela. Your unwavering dedication to your students, particularly our child, is received with heartfelt appreciation." So it really does speak to the relationship that she is always forming and working on with families. She is engaging, she's warm, she's soft-spoken. And I have to say, when she first got here, I remember my first observation with her. I gave her some feedback, and she is somebody who took that feedback and grew, and has always done that, and didn't see it as, you know, being a new teacher and having an administrator come in and say, "Carmela, I'd like for you to work on this." She just was like, "I got it. I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to make it work." And that tells you about somebody's character. So, Tessa, you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, Carmela has been, you know, A1 top notch. I can't speak, you know, any highly of her. I think from a professional standpoint, I think Laura covered everything. But, you know, I think most importantly, you know, Carmela's a nice person, and she's a great person, and she's someone who, if I had a child in the district, I would trust her with my child. Like, she's a great person, like, you know, and I think that's the number one thing you need to be an educator, is that you need to like children. You need to be a good person. And, you know, she's a great person, very honorable, very smart, flexible. You know, I can't speak highly of her, any highlier of her.
We could keep going on with the adjectives. Carmela also does coach in the district as well. She makes time to do that as well, balances that out. So it is with great pleasure that Tessa and I recommend Carmela for tenure.
And Carmela is here.
Yes, I'm here. Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Laura and Tessa, and thank you to all the administrators and the Board of Education and the community for allowing me the opportunity to teach at Hillside. And I'm really excited and proud to be a part of the Hastings community. And also thank you to my students for allowing me to be a part of their learning experience. And I've truly enjoyed and loved every minute of being in the classroom with them. And I look forward to my future years at Hillside.
Thank you, Carmela.
Is there a motion to approve the tenure recommendation for Carmela Tedeschi? I see Doug. Is there a second?
Second.
So all in favor? Congratulations, Carmela.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And I want to thank Amy Cases and Laura Sullivan and Tessa Stewart for all their contributions to prepare the information on each of the candidates this evening. It's one of my favorite nights to hear about all of the educators that are working collaboratively and touching each of the students' lives. So we can now revert back to the earlier portion of our agenda. Dr. Henning Piedmont, are there any announcements?
Sure, just a few. This afternoon, Mr. Stewart, Ms. Samansky, and Ms. Coker and myself met with a group of students from the high school as part of our Time to Talk About Racism series, and we had an opportunity to have some conversations about the anti-Asian and Asian American violence that's going on in the country. And so it was, good for the students to have that platform, which was the purpose, and good for us to hear some of what they were thinking and feeling, and as well as for us to also share, how concerning the circumstances are for us as we also see what's happening in the country. So we were grateful that the students were able to participate. In terms of additional announcements, this Thursday, tomorrow, there's a community quiz bowl that starts at 6:30. On Monday, April 12th, the Board of Education has a work session from 5:30 to 7:30. On Tuesday, April 13th, and actually a major important day on Monday, April 12th, is our first day of having all children return all in. So we haven't been all in since last March. It's a pretty significant event. I want to thank everyone, all of our amazing faculty and staff, our Board of Education, for your commitment and your interest in ensuring that we do everything possible to try to get every child back into the building. Obviously, there will be some children and families who are going to use the remote option, which is still available. But there's been a tremendous amount of effort universally throughout the school district, the families, our students, all of our faculty and staff, everyone who's really been committed to this mission, and it's going to happen for us on Monday. And I want to thank the PTSA for providing some celebratory items. There will be some, some balloon arches and decorations and other kinds of things. Each school is doing something as well. That'll be pretty exciting. I hear the music will be played in between periods at the middle school. So some pretty interesting things, some really fancy giveaways. So it's a really exciting event, and we really, really just are thrilled that we're able to end the school year in the all-in model. And on April 13th, the Hastings High School Septa community conversation will be from 6:30 to 7:30. On Wednesday, the 14th, there'll be a PTSA and Septa and superintendent's chat that starts at 4:30 and ends at 5:30. On Monday, April 19th, all petitions nominating candidates for the board and for budget propositions must be received by 5 p.m. by the district clerk, and that is Ms. Melissa Della Barrera, who's here. You have her number, or so if you need to call her, you may, as well as certainly send her an email if you wish. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, Valerie. Are there any administrative comments this evening? Is there anything from Melissa Samansky?
I'll add to this evening, just keeping with our celebratory spirit this evening for music. So one of our talented 8th graders, Jasper Zimmerman, received an award of honorable mention in the 2020 Student Composers Competition held by the National Association for Music Education for his composition for Reed Quintet, Swing State. And the press picked that up, and there's been quite a bit of fanfare about that. It's quite wonderful. So congratulations to Jasper and to our music department. Also, congratulations to the approximately 125 instrumental music students in grades 7 through 12 and the HHS FMS Music Department on the release of Safe and Sound, virtual concert featuring bands, orchestras, jazz, and more. And that can be found off of our homepage under district announcements. So congratulations to our music department.
Thank you, Melissa. Maureen, do you have any comments at the beginning of the meeting, or are we just going to move forward as you have the budget and the building update later?
We'll just move forward. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Maureen. So we'll move on to public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for any participant to make a statement of up to 3 minutes to the Board of Education. This would be an opportunity to share comment on any of the agenda items that are in tonight's agenda. If you would like to comment, please state your name and if you're a resident of Hastings, and use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and Melissa DeLibera will make your Zoom available for speaking.
Ms. Berman, I think we skipped the two student representatives to the
Oh
board.
my goodness. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Sabine and Sophia. I really apologize. So we'll back up. We'll go back to the student report, Sophia and Sabine. And thank you, Valerie.
Hello, everyone. Just a few things for me today. The PL and National Honor Society applications are due within the next week, and for juniors like myself, that's causing high amounts of stress. Spring sports have started informal workouts, and their season officially begins in a few weeks. And now I'm going to let Sophia say a few words.
Hi. So it's been a big past few weeks for seniors. I think this week is the last week college decisions are coming out. So that's really exciting for everyone. Local scholarship applications for seniors have also opened, but this means senioritis is also really kicking in. But I think going in full is going to rejuvenate people and give us some new energy. I know seniors are really excited for the first day. We're planning on wearing our senior shirts, and it's going to be a big celebration. I'm super excited to go back. So thank you.
Again, my apologies, Sophia and Sabine, and thank you for sharing your comments. So we will now have public comment. And as I stated, if you would like to make a comment, please use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of the screen, and Melissa DeLibera will call on you.
Susie Caramonica.
Yes, hi, thank you. Susie Harmonica. I have kids in one in each of the schools in 4th grade, 8th grade, and 10th grade, all boys. I just wanted to comment about the budget. I was reviewing, like, for each of the schools, what the recommended number of sections are for next year. And I was surprised at some of the discrepancies. For example, you know, at the highest we have the 4th graders going into 5th with 145 students enrolled and 6 sections. On the low end, we have the 1st graders, the kindergarten going into 1st grade with an expected enrollment of 107 students. So that's a difference of what is that, 30 something, and there's 6 sections for both of those grades. And you know, for all of us who have had a child going into middle school, it's an extremely challenging time to be going into middle school at any time for, like, the change, that experience, but especially during this time where, you know, 3rd and 4th grade have been such critical learning years, and the last year and a half have been academically challenging for these kids because of the pandemic and the lack of teaching time that they've had. So I just wanted to bring attention to this because, you know, I saw that for the kindergarten grade, where there's 125 expected to be enrolled, we proposed a 7th section as opposed to the 5th grade, which would be 145 students with 6 sections. There's a couple other grades. The kids going into 9th grade have 140 students. A couple other high school grades have 138. I mean, my older kids have told me some of their classes have 28 students, 26 students, you know, which is a challenge at the older grade, but especially I want to highlight the 5th graders. So that's my key point there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's all for public comment.
Thank you, Melissa. We'll move on to the business items.
Lauren, can I just, I'd like to say something before we move on. Is that okay?
Jody, is that part of the business items?
No.
Could you save it for the board comments at the end? Or is it part of one of the agenda items that we have in front of us?
Never mind.
Thank you. The business items 1 through 4, are there any questions or comments? I noticed that item number 3 does not have a document attached, but it's just to approve the appointment of election inspectors for the May 18th election. Are there any questions or comments regarding these business items? Is there a motion to approve business items 1 through 4?
So moved.
And a second? All in favor? We'll now be looking at the placement and services for CSE and CPSE. Are there any questions or comments regarding these placements? Is there a motion to approve the placements for CSE and CPSE?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? We'll move on to the personnel items. We have some changes to the Schedule B appointments. Are there any questions or comments regarding the revisions? Is there a motion to approve the Schedule B appointment revisions?
So moved.
And a second? I see Doug. All in favor? There is an amendment, and this amendment is regarding a retirement date. Is there a motion to approve this amendment?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? We have 3 leaves of absence. Are there any questions or comments regarding these leaves? Is there a motion to approve the 3 leaves of absence?
That you.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? We've already reviewed personnel 4D, all the tenure recommendations, and again, congratulations. And we have a termination listed. Is there a motion to approve this termination? I see Doug. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? The minutes for the March 22nd, 2021 Board of Education meeting are attached. Are there any questions or comments regarding these minutes? Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the March 22nd, 2021 Board of Education meeting?
So moved.
And a second? All in favor? Any opposed? I didn't see Doug. Is that an opposition?
I'm in favor.
Favor, thank you. The facilities committee met today. Is there a summary that you'd like to provide, Maureen?
Sure. I'm not going to share the slides, but I had Melissa attach them. They're just to kind of bullet the points that were discussed. We did review the use of facilities policy, and we're going to be looking to potentially make a recommendation to the policy committee to either clarify some language about groups that would either be given priority to use the fields and potentially consider putting some language in about that I guess either residents, recreation groups will be given a priority. So, you know, again, it's a good practice to review it, because as we know, earlier in this year around COVID times, we did review it at that time. So we went over that, and it was also in relationship to, we are getting some requests to use the fields for a cricket program that is running in the town of Greenberg. And as part of that review of the potential of allowing that to happen, we wanted to make sure that it adhered to our policy. So we discussed that a bit, and we'll be making a recommendation of either adding some language to the policy committee to consider for that particular policy. We spoke about just summer work and space planning, and just talked about how the need to kind of look at, especially at the Farragut complex, at looking at some 5-year planning, not necessarily around maintenance type items here, but programmatic needs of the system, and how we think that we should be either considering working with our architect to assist us in that process. And then we spoke about some items related to the capital project that I'll share as part of the normal capital update I provide to the board. So that was kind of a summary of things that were discussed. We just, you know, spoke a little bit more at length about some of the items that Joe will be working on this summer. You know, if the budget is passed and those items are included in that, we just discussed that a bit. And that was, we did have about an hour and a half of a meeting, but that's kind of a quick summary of the topics we talked about. Doug, I don't know if you think, did I cover everything, or Valerie? I think that was it.
Yeah. I think you did a good job. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Maureen. And again, right now, the next 2 items are Maureen's also, and Valerie. We are here this evening to have another budget discussion. And last night, the New York State Legislature was up late going through education aid roles. And so Maureen's and Valerie's had a very busy day providing new information that we should consider. And so this information came to the board at a later time today, so all of us may not have had an opportunity to fully review it, but Maureen has presented this new information in a way that can provide some comparison options for us. And we do have the option of having a board work session next week on April 12th at 5:30. So we can consider these options further, as this is really brand new information, but I think we'll all see that it's positive information. So I'll hand things over to you, Valerie and Maureen, to give us a framework for what this new information is and how it directly impacts the state aid change impacts, and the federal aid package that we potentially will be receiving will impact our budget.
Thank you so much. And Maureen, thank you again for preparing these slides. We rarely get good news from the state, but you know, it does help process some of the decisions that the board needs to make. So what you have in terms of the budget overview, Maureen, has carefully prepared to sort of give you enough information so that you make the decision. So ultimately, you know, what we're proposing certainly some ways in which you can think about this new information. But at the end of the day, obviously, you have to make the decision about what makes the most sense. We had talked about last year restoring some of the positions that we reduced, as you recall, it was a fairly significant number. And I think that the proposals that we have here don't necessarily represent don't represent everything that was proposed, and it also represents some things that were not proposed. So I wanted to also add that to the mix in terms of framing that as we go through these slides and as the board engages in your conversation. And I'll turn it over to Maureen. And thank you again, Maureen.
Sure, no problem. So obviously, once the aid runs actually came out last night, late, like 8:30 or so, and I just kind of spent the day, and there's some still, I'm providing tonight, some updated information. Of course, like we said, it is good news in the way that the aid that we're scheduled to receive next year is higher than we initially had anticipated, although I did kind of think we may get some more money, but was surprised that it was more than I had anticipated. And also with this new federal dollars allocation, we knew there was going to be money coming through that, but we weren't clear on what that would look like. And also there's still some additional information we'll need between now and when we meet again next Monday, which is going to be important because some of that federal money coming through is going to be tied to certain types of expenditures. It's not going to be money that you can just use to decide, oh, we're going to do this or that. I was reading through the document today, and I have a few more webinars I have to attend this week because some of that money, similar to the way other grant money is given to the district, the title grants and the IDEA grants, it has to be used for very specific reasons. So, tonight I'll mention what the runs reflect, but, tonight in terms of how that'll impact our budget, are there items that we can use to pay for items that we've already planned for in our budget, and how that'll shake out, our updated budget proposal that we'll provide to you next week is to be continued. But what I can share tonight and what the slides I put together as a way of update are twofold. One is related to an update based upon our expenditure plan that is outside of the new aid run, because as the time between when we first proposed the budget till the time the board adopts the budget, there can be changes that are either increases or decreases as more information becomes known. And then, so one of the slides tonight, and I'm going to share, Melissa, I'll just share my screen? Okay. I'm just going to pull up the presentation, reflects that. And then the other slides that I've prepared for this evening for discussion purposes reflect our new state aid revenue amount that we're scheduled to receive. And just some ideas, again, just to start the conversation about ideas in which we can either use that additional funds to reduce taxes or, reduce the amount of allocation of fund balance and some ideas around that. So I'm going to share my screen now. And wait, which one is this? Okay, budget update. And I'm going, okay, everyone sees my screen, correct? Okay, perfect. Okay, so just to kind of get us started, as I mentioned earlier, this first slide really represents, if you look at the date on the top, it's April 6th. This is actually happened yesterday as part of our continued internal conversations that we have with the different building level budget managers and leaders, because the proposals that either they've given us, sometimes things change and we do need to make adjustments. In particular, that it does happen more times in the area of special ed, because as they are continuing to have meetings between January, when they gave me what they believe they needed for next year's staffing, and what it is, April 6th, they've had a number, I don't know the exact number, but a number of meetings and opportunities to look at the staffing and determine whether that they felt it, that things change. It could either change where it's an addition, but in this situation, what special ed was able to inform us is that the 4 aides that they had as potentials, they were able, just with the meetings they had and some shifts in some of where the students are, whether they're here or not, or whether they're going to be coming or not, has changed. And that resulted in them not deciding to withdraw that proposal. So the slide here reflects before we have the new state aid number, where our current budget stood as of yesterday afternoon, April 6th. And as you can see by this number, the difference in the number from the previous time we presented the budget is really removing those 4 aid positions. It was, I think, $260,000 of expense. And the current expenditure budget now that we were proposing based on the removal of those positions is now $53 million. It went from, I believe, like a 3.5% or 5.4% increase budget to budget to a 3.07. As you can see, on the revenue side of things, we took that $260,000 reduction. We actually reduced, or at least in this proposal to the board, our recommendation was to reduce the amount of appropriated fund balance that we were planning on using to fund part of the expenditures of that budget. So that was as of yesterday, knowing our state aid number, which came out late last night. And again, our tax rate and in this scenario remains the same as it had been at our previous budgets that we've presented. So this is then what happened subsequent to that change in the budget. Our state aid run came out last night. And one thing I just want to remind anyone who has looked at a state aid run, there are numbers on that. And what they reflect are sometimes the amounts can be higher or lower based upon projections the state is making for us. So as an example, if you were to look at the run, the number itself would be higher, but what is included in that number is money for running a universal pre-K program, which we are not going to do. So the $200,000 that we would receive if we were to run a full pre-K program, which would not even cover the cost of doing it, nor do we have the space for it, we have to back out of that run. So just in case, if anyone happens to, sometimes you'll see a run or a number. So as part of the process, when I get the state aid run, some of it is based on expenditure-based aids are driven on projections the state has based upon our previous year's expenditures. So I do need to do a reconciliation of that to understand what the proposal really reflects and what as close to actual amount of aid we're going to receive. So based on doing that calculation, our new aid, based on the state aid projection for next year, the actual aid I believe we will receive off of that, based on that run, is $5.6991 million. So, that represents from our initial budget overview of almost $500,000 increase in state aid, which is not a usual thing for, that we would see such a significant increase in aid, but, we were very happy when we did see that. Again, I think as most of the board is aware, I think the one thing we do have to be really careful with here, I think the increase is directly correlated with all the federal funds that are being given to the state, right? The state, outside of the money that was earmarked through federal grants, there was a tremendous amount of federal monies that were given to the state, which is allowing for this increase, for the state to make this increase in state aid. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I don't think that money is going to be rolling every year. So at this point, I think we have to be careful, because this may not be a recurring number of state aid we'll receive. It may typically, pre-COVID, we would have received around $5.3 to $5.4 million. So I think anything, as we look at this dollar amount, we have to be careful not to say, okay, we can spend it, because if we add expenses to our budget based on that $466,000 and that money doesn't come to us in the following year, then we're going to end up having that issue again of looking to make reductions. So it's good news. And because of that, and the reason I lay that out is because then you'll understand what the thought process is in terms of those extra dollars on some of the slides that we'll be presenting in a few minutes. In addition to that $466,000, there is also a federal allocation on what we were given, that it's the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund. There is an allocation that is suggesting we're going to get 1.5 million. The reason there's an asterisk there is because I know we're going to receive some money. We are receiving about 3 times the amount Dobbs Ferry is receiving. According to that run, we're receiving about 5 or 6 times the amount Irvington. So similar sized districts. The allocations are typically tied to your Title I funding. There's a formula in which is used to determine what your allocation of that fund should be. There's a few districts like Hastings that seems their allocation seems very out of whack in comparison to like, well, other districts, surrounding districts. So although I think we will be getting money, I want to make sure that in fact that allocation is correct. And actually Ardsley has a similar situation where their allocation is also out of whack. And we're, and by the end of the week, if that's in fact the allocation, at least then I'll feel comfortable that the calculation that, it was the right amount for us, because again, I've actually had people in other districts text me like, why is your allocation so high? So it is something that does stand out to me and to others. We'll to be continued. We'll have the information on that for sure on Monday. American Rescue Plan. That's another amount of money that's coming through I believe in some type of grant. And again, that allocation for us is 257. That amount makes sense. It's very similar to what other like-sized districts are receiving under that grant. And just for purposes, if later, just some of those acronyms, the reason I just provided that little explanation is just so if anyone's curious of where those monies are coming from. The one thing that's important on both of these items, and I've notated it here, both of these items are not one-year grants. They are multi-year grants. So similar to when we've seen money either with the, say, the Smart Schools bond or the Excel money, it's kind of a federal grant that runs through the state. They're not a one-year grant. And actually that's a good thing. So those 2 line items, whatever the final line item may be, these are monies that we can use, as you can see with the CRRSA, that money can be used through for this next school year, and then the beginning of into the following year, not the full year, but it has to be expended through September 2023, and then the American Rescue Plan actually can be used through September 2024. And the reason yes.
Question.
Yep.
So is this money similar to remember how the ERA money worked?
Yes.
Is this similar?
No, it's a little different because I would say, Valerie, it reminds me more of how like Excel money worked, because it comes through in a federal grant, but it's more than a fiscal year's time. So the ERA money, some of that money was more restorative in the year that you were getting it. These are actually like whatever allocation you have. It reminds me of Smart Schools. Like what I imagine is going to happen is, once we get the real understanding of, like I read I have done a lot of reading, but I mean, it's like this big, right? Like all the information. So, I was kind of going through it. And as an example, under the CRRSA, there's some information that says, 14% of your allocation has to be used for summer programming and remediation and those type of items. So I think once we know exactly how we need to spend the money, then of course we'll have to work to say, like, make a recommendation to the board and to reflect that. So what's nice about that is if that was, say, to run some type of summer remediation program, then it would allow us to run it both for this summer, next summer. And I think the idea behind it was they know that a lot of these are going to be multi-year kind of issues, and they're allowing districts to kind of spread it over. So I think the grant's going to be different than the way we write our title grants, because it'll cover more of like a multi-year, type of spending. I know Melissa and her counterparts are, many of them, there's already a lot of chatter around these things, because again, we just found out the information, but we'll pretty much in the next week have to figure out a plan on how to apply for it, how to spend it, and what we're allowed to spend it for. And actually, in reading, there was even the ability to use some of this money toward facility improvements, because I guess some of it's tied to COVID, and some districts may be looking to make modifications to their, I would imagine their ventilation or things like that. So there are a lot of uses of it. But again, there's a few webinars that most, all school districts are, looking for some guidance from our partners up at the state that help us with, things like this when they come out, and to kind of dissect it. So that way we'll be able to, make a recommendation to the board, because some of the money may be able to be, so as an example, it's a possibility you could argue that some of that money could be used to reduce class sizes, and that would be an appropriate use. So as an example, say if we wanted to either, if we were to keep an additional section, a proposed additional section at Hillside, or if we were to propose additional, we may be able to, add teachers, for that. But again, we need to be cautious, because if this money goes away, then we do have those teachers. So that's where, as we look at the information, we'll look to see how that money can be used. Can some of it offset some of the proposed items in our budget? If it were to be appropriate, are some of these things that are in additional expenditures we're going to be recommending? I think some of them will be, because I know there may be now with the money there may be, we may be required also to provide some remedial services in order to get the money. So I think, again, this just literally came out last night at 8 o'clock, and basically all day long, there's been a lot of back and forth on it. And, by the end of this week, I think we'll have a really good understanding of exactly how much we're getting, how, what are the appropriate uses of it, so that we can make the recommendation to the board, and then see how those federal monies, what the tie-in is to our current budget proposal. Will it be an offset to it? Will it be that we're going to, increase our budget and use some of this revenue to offset that? So that's the update on that. And again, it's similar to last year, getting this information kind of late, like we're just getting it. We have to kind of now make a big wholesale change to our budget, because in the next couple of weeks, the board has to adopt it. So unfortunately, the timing of this, like, had we even known that there was a potential of these, these monies, it would have helped us better in our planning. But I can tell you that, I think, everyone was kind of surprised that we ended up with, the amount of money that is earmarked for schools. So, but it's good news. But again, it will now require us to do a lot of work this week in order to make some recommendations to the board, so that we can fold those into or make the appropriate changes to our budget. So, I'm sorry. Yes.
I just want to say, just so we're clear, though, the increase of the state aid, the approximate $466,000 is an increase that does not have earmarking. Earmarking is really in regard to the federal allocation, and that's the piece that will require more time, and we'll get more recommendations next week.
Exactly. Yes. So I just wanted to cover it, because, the 466 is, we can kind of have a little bit more discussion on that tonight, because we know that's coming in terms of revenue, where we can use that however we see fit. It doesn't require us to, apply or use it for a special purpose. It's really it's almost coming in through the foundation aid formula. So that's our money. That's part of our regular budget. But some of these other items may be able to either offset some of what we propose, some of what we already pay for, add things. So that'll be what we need to kind of have a better understanding about that potential other 1.7 mil over the next couple of years. And then again, I just included this because, and this is like the first page or about 25 pages that explains the American Rescue Plan, but it just kind of gives you a sense. And the reason I included it was just to kind of show where, one of the first, paragraphs in the document that breaks down the use of this money, or what the intended use of this money is. One of the shall reserve not less than 20% of such funds to address learning loss. So, I mean, it's pretty clear that there's a certain percentage. This is just an example. 20% of that 257 has to be, and it gives you some examples. And actually, it goes on and provides a much longer list, and it kind of speaks to how these are grants that we currently receive, how very similarly they have to be, there's a percentage of your population and you have to, spend that amount of money in order to receive the amount of allocation. So we'll be working through that.
Maureen, on the first page, you had listed the also the higher education relief fund. We don't get money from that.
Well, no, what I was saying, so actually that CRRSA, that money, it comes, it's like under the auspice of that, like however the money's coming to us. Like I just, that's sort of that's how the money is flowing through the federal government, how it's being earmarked. Okay. So, I mean, it's not typical the way we get things, but that's how the two buckets of money are coming through this like federal funding source. So typically we would not, but that's how they're earmarking these funds. So it's just to kind of, clarify, because there's so many, if you look at the runs, that's how they refer to it, but they don't give you what that actual agency or what that grant is on the federal level. So again, that's just, again, the American Rescue Plan, which was a new pot of money, right? A new grant. So that's the documentation there on that. So to kind of now focus really our efforts for this evening about talking about what we definitively know is that we're going to receive more state aid. We've already, like I said, made the modification so far on things that we know we don't need, which is the 4 aids. And now the other item that we wanted to discuss with the board tonight is this additional monies, and what are some scenarios or ideas in what would be the appropriate way to but like how should we handle those additional funds? So scenario one really is showing that our state aid, it's reflecting the new dollar amount that our run is showing, which again is 466,000 over what we've previously shown. And in this particular scenario, what the recommendation is just saying, we're getting this extra aid, we're making the recommendation to reduce the amount or potentially to say we're going to reduce the amount of appropriated fund balance. And with that reduction of moving the fund balance into balance this budget, we would take those additional funds, like say that money now that we're not using to offset next year's budget, and we would make a recommendation to the board to either put that money in a debt service reserve, which then could be used to like offset next year's first debt payment or something like that, to say, we have this extra money this year, we know we're getting some debt on the books next year, why don't we hold that money now, knowing that when that new debt rolls on, we can use that money to offset next year's debt. So that's the reason that we would make that recommendation, because that will help us pay debt. It will then help us not have as large of a tax increase for 22-23 than we normally would, because as we've spoken about at previous meetings, the concern that we know that we are going to have a new debt payment in the 22-23 school year. By using that money and reducing the allocation of fund balance, that would allow that money then to be set aside to be used in the following budget cycle to help pay down that debt. And that's something, a lot of times when there's extra money when there are additional funds available, whether through revenues or expenditures, districts will use that money occasionally to pay down debt, because they know that does benefit the district by paying off an obligation that is there. And again, because the concern, again, we have to think about is that although it's great we're getting this extra money, if that money's not recurring next year, we don't want to build in more expenditures, so that's why that's one scenario. And again, that doesn't change the tax rate. All that really does effectively is allow us to save more money for a future obligation. So that's one scenario. And we can, talk about the merits of each. The second scenario, again, now this is a different way of looking at it. We're saying, okay, we have this extra money, and we're just going to basically take the extra revenue and we're going to reduce the amount of money we need from taxes. And instead of, we'll still appropriate our fund balance, we're not going to change anything else. And basically what this scenario is doing is just allowing more or less, it's a negative, it would be a reduction in the amount of taxes we will collect next year from the village, and it would result in taxpayers having a small decrease in their taxes, little less than 1% decrease in their overall tax bill for next year. So we would be, basically for the 1 year we're getting this money, say to the taxpayers, we're going to give you the break, we're going to reduce taxes. So that's something to consider. The only, I do like, I think that there's obviously, I think we all understand this, there's something very, would be very good about this particular proposal. The only thing we just have to caution, and we've talked about it a lot, is sometimes lowering your base levy hurts. Base levy, when I say the base levy, the property tax levy, reducing that number kind of hurts you in the following fiscal year. So it's not so much the concern, it's good to be able to pass on a tax relief to taxpayers, but we do have to consider a lot of districts struggle with this because it does lower your property tax levy then moving forward into the following year. And with the tax cap, the way the tax cap kind of works, it can kind of hurt you in the out years. So again, that would be my only caution there. Again, if we weren't in a tax cap environment, quite frankly, I would probably recommend this, but because of the tied to the tax levy, there's a little bit of a concern with going with the straight scenario too. But again, it is something to consider. And then scenario 3, all this really does, again, and it could be split out in any way, is just to sort of say, okay, well, maybe we increase the levy a bit, but then we do also decrease some of the fund balance allocation. So it was just more or less taking the 466,000, using some to reduce the amount of fund balance we may need, again, with the idea that that money then would be put in reserve for the following, the 22-23 school year, to be applied to when we know we do have debt coming on the books to help smooth that bump in the tax rate. That's one thing. That's, again, that would also be something we could do in this scenario, but at the same time lowering the effective increase to the tax rate to about a little less than 0.25%. So I think at this time, in terms of the additional state aid, just the straight additional state aid, we're not recommending adding anything back, because I think we've discussed, and some trustees have brought this up, it's also, it's one thing to look at something year over year, but we do have to think about, everything we add, we have to sustain long term. And we do have to consider that as we look at our overall, not so much our tax growth, but our budget growth, right? So we don't want to, although we're getting more money, it may not be in our best interest to just add a bunch of, items back on the expenditure side. So that's why, at least for purposes of discussion this evening, we did not propose a scenario in which we would be spending more. Unless the board felt that we should be looking at other items. But I think we will have that opportunity once we unpack that federal aid. There may be some other opportunities to add some items back to the budget, or we may be able to pay for some items such as because I've even read where it can pay for technology and softwares and things like that. So if we're able to kind of move some of those items out of the budget, then maybe there would be something we would consider adding back to our expenditure budget. So, so basically next steps, and I just kind of threw a couple items on here for discussion purposes, not to suggest we're doing that. But I think, we spoke, again, when we spoke previously to getting this state aid money, I think, the board's had a good discussion and some concern about, adding, I think we all appreciate why, the positions we have on the sheet, or some recommendations that we've been speaking about. But I know that there's always that concern is should we be adding right now? Should we be adding? I think we've talked about, I kind of grouped sort of all the other things beside the aids in here, but I think, we've spoken a lot, meeting internally, about we do view the science as a bit different, because that is sort of more of a restoration, but some of the other items that we've been speaking about are new items or expansion of existing items. So we do kind of look at those as two different things, but we wanted just to get some direction from the board on whether we should be thinking about pulling back some of those additional items, or not necessarily not ever doing them, but should we pause on those, for another year, so we do have a better understanding of what our state aid is going to look like, in the out years. And, should we still, I think, our recommendation, of course, would be still to keep the science position in, because we view that to be more of a restoration than an addition. But again, we wanted to just, talk about it to make sure, because we do have only a few more weeks before we want to present you with a budget that the board will feel comfortable adopting. Also, as I, been speaking about earlier, once I have the opportunity to go on some of the webinars and speak to our financial advisor, and have a good understanding of the of what the rules are around spending those federal dollars, we'll be able to fold that into our recommendation for next week. And of course, Valerie and Melissa will be the ones who will decide how those monies are appropriately spent. But once we understand how much we have to spend, or how much and what purposes, then we can then either use some of that, like I said, to potentially offset technology, software, some things that we are still recommending, because we don't, we are still kind of in this area where will it be remote learning next year? We're not comfortable pulling all those things off the table. Are there going to be other COVID related expenses that I can put through the federal monies that I can then pull out of our current expenditure plan? So there may be some tweaks to our existing budget that'll actually bring it down if some of these items can be offset by federal monies. Just as an example, as you may remember, there were still some dollars allocated to additional cleaning and cleaning supplies and facilities related items that we have stated we're hoping that in another year we won't have to spend this. If that's something we could pull out of our budget and put to the grant, then we would be lowering our budgetary allocation for next year. So I know there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot I'm trying to share, and I'm trying to speak quickly because I know the board wants to talk. So that's why if it feels rushed, I'm doing that so you have an opportunity to speak. And then again, the last bullet, we could, as we always do, we are always relooking. And I know some board members may have some thoughts on some additional budget savings measures we should be considering. And of course, we always will consider and look into whatever, things that people may have would like us to further investigate. And we always also look for ways to bring things in when we feel that it's possible. So I think that was the conclusion of the updated slide. So I figured we would open it up for discussion again, because I think obviously, things have changed quite a bit from our last time, and we can start some discussion tonight. And of course, then there'll be a lot, further discussion on Monday as we present more information.
I'm happy to just jump in. I want to make sure I'm clear, and also just give a sense of where I am from hearing what you said, Maureen. And thank you for that presentation, especially since it's so last minute to put all this together with the new numbers that just came your way. So I mean, I'm thrilled about the increase in state aid, but I'm also still feeling kind of conservative in what we want to do in terms of the budget, because, and this is where I'm checking my understanding, our budget to budget increases every year, and we still have, even if we use all of the state funds, we're still, taking monies in order to meet the new budget for next year. So it's great that it reduces that amount, but it doesn't just sort of put us suddenly in the black, right, on everything. So for that reason, I'm in favor of restoring the science position. But your slide where you were saying hold the others and let's see how all these rest of the numbers play out, seems to be where I'm thinking, because we still are borrowing money. We still did use a lot of funds for COVID expenses this year. I think it was over $1 million. So we have other balances to restore as well.
Thank you. No, thank you, Allison. And I think, that's helpful. I mean, obviously everyone's going to give us some feedback, but that's where I think we were, when we did hear some concerns about that, that was the idea, not necessarily that we're throwing them out, but like, our feeling was that the science is still in our minds a restoration. So, although this current slide, just to be clear, still has some of those other items in play, just to give you a sense, if we were to keep if we were to either decide moving forward that we are in fact in favor of restoring the science, but pausing, for our 21-22 school year on some of those other recommendations, just to give you a sense, that would reduce our expenditures another, 200 and change, 230. So then that would bring the budget increase would be then at least under 3%. It would be high twos, but we would start, getting down below that 3% number. So we understand the concern. It's not so much as I know people had not an issue with that. And I think another thing, just in terms of class size, is again, we have been monitored, as we always do, and it's always I feel like it's always such a back and forth here. I mean, I think, we've spoken a lot, like we do think that we could probably won't potentially need that 7th section of kindergarten. So that would be something we would remove also at this point. So again, just to be clear, we would, we were sort of leaning toward that way, but we felt very comfortable because the aides are not something we cut, rather they were not needed. That was different. They were for a variety of reasons. And there were some other tweaks within their tuition, again, as meetings occur. But I think that was, somewhat of what we were thinking after tonight. If we got clarification on that, the next budget proposal you would then see would remove those items, only have the restoration of the science in there. And then a potential, if there's other feedback we received tonight of other items, we can go back and look to either reduce, tighten up, and again, potentially even remove because of this federal money. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And that would also help us remove the amount of money we need to take out of our fund balances. And to your point, restore some of that, because just because that does set us up again, as I mentioned earlier, I think one of our trustees had, rightfully so. So listen, we know we have debt coming on next year. We need to be conscious of that. And I think that's in thinking about that and thinking about that appropriated fund balance, Valerie was like, Maureen, the debt is something we could look at because that's a real tangible thing that impacts everybody. It pays down something, it helps taxes. So, we felt as though that's something, and it's because we don't know if this is a recurring revenue. That's why we were leaning towards that recommendation.
Maureen, can I just get clarity? If we, let's just say in scenario 2, we did go to the negative tax levy. Just take us through again what the levy implications are next year. Does it actually, do we start then at, what's the levy here? 43,620. So we were at 43,857 last year. And we would be at 43,620. So is that then our new base, 43,620?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, that's why I think that's the one, I understand the appeal, and, we're sensitive that, that this, we understand that's why we did put this as a scenario. We don't want to completely discount it as not something that we shouldn't consider, but I think that would, again, that's the only reason for concern there, is because it does drop that base levy, and that's why I think that scenario 3 sort of like says, well, can we use some of it to decrease taxes, but then not put ourselves into a negative tax levy, starting the next year, because that's a fairly significant swing in the base levy, because it's actually, we're bringing it down like it's showing a negative 236, but effectively you're dropping it almost $500,000. So, is there a scenario in which it's like somewhere in between? And again, once we have a better understanding of those federal funds, maybe we would feel more comfortable that it wouldn't be as big of a deal for us in the following out years. But that's the only reason I would say that, maybe we should consider something in the middle of the 2 scenarios, like scenario 3, possibly, if there's a concern about keeping the tax rate as low as possible. So.
I'm just curious, we don't have to go down this path too far, but I'm just really curious about this. Has there ever been any talk in Albany about you can choose the lowest of your past 3 years, the highest of your past 3 years, or something, so you're not just tied to 1 year in case you do want to decrease?
that's what I think, one of the things, Doug, it's interesting because prior to, I know this is a long time ago, but prior to the tax cap, we actually did have a few budgets that were negative tax rates because there was years in which you could do it, but you weren't handicapping or, hurting yourself in the out years. So we felt that's a concern that my colleagues, myself included, of course, we have said to the legislators, like in some ways it's flawed because at times in which we would absolutely make this recommendation, ever since the tax cap, it makes people not want to, hurt yourself in the out years. So unfortunately, we have at least suggested that there could be something, as you're suggesting, something that would either then allow you to at least go back to the previous year, maybe not even 3 years, just like the year before when you didn't have the decrease. But right now, there wasn't, I think there's so many things that they're constantly trying to negotiate on our behalf. And that's just one that they've had a very hard time making any headway in getting that adjustment. So has it been discussed? Yes. I don't think there's a lot of support currently. There's some support currently, but not a lot of willingness to make that a change in the tax cap formula. So that would be, again, I think, not something we necessarily have to decide this evening. Maybe some direction in like, we agree that we shouldn't be increasing expenditures and we agree that it should either be used in 1, 2, or 3. That's fine. I think that would be, at least that would help us, or if there was a leaning toward from board members, then we could roll that into our presentation for next week.
And what would be helpful for Monday, I don't know if you're able to put this together, but at these different levels, what are the implications for our ability to levy? And, and I think we have to make conservative estimates about the revenues and the state aid. And, does that, if, for example, we went to the 0 or 0.54, whatever, 0.3, whatever it is, if we went there, what does that look like for our ability just to cover the rollover and possibly add, new stuff if we need to? Just, what do those scenarios look like? It'd be helpful to just look at that Monday, just so we can see actual numbers, Okay.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think sometimes you're right. I think sometimes you have to almost see it like rolling out to the future to appreciate the effect of it. Because that, in looking at it this way, I get it. It wouldn't be obvious why it would potentially hurt you in out years. And that's why I think what you're suggesting may be even helpful just for the conversation, because I think, there could be residents that look at this and say, this is great, let's just do this. And I think just understanding how that may impact us in years 2 and 3 is important to consider when we're making the recommendation on what's the best way to handle this additional state aid. But I think, again, one thing we do know is that it would be premature to think we would be receiving this level of aid every year. I think if in 22, 23, maybe there is more of a move at the state level to fully fund, foundation aid, which actually is part of what I read in the state document, but they haven't fully funded it for like 20 years. So, I would be just cautious about, I'm very happy in what we're receiving this year. It's great. It's wonderful. And it's welcome news, but we just have to be mindful about out years of receiving that same level of support.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I know there was questions, the board, there was some different questions. I don't know if you want me to just hit on some of those or what you're thinking about. There were some questions that I know I received and just some, just areas of the budget that maybe people may have wanted to.
Well, I'd like to follow up on what Doug was saying there, and maybe we'll get to it. First, a couple of gratitudes all around. I appreciate the way Valerie and Maureen, you've tried to describe this extra money, and I think you've done it accurately and in a conservative tone here. I think overall it's very strange to hear that we've gotten recently some more money from the state than we thought in a year where we're planning on using our fund reserves. So could you mention, is there a plan related to our fund reserves? Are we trying to use our reserves because we feel like we have too much?
No.
Is that why? That's not why we're choosing to use it this year, right?
No, I mean, actually, I mean, fund balance, and again, like I could talk about, I know there's, and I understand, I think I'm always of the, there is a balance in reserve accounts, right? So I would say that when they're there for, let me break them down. So in terms of the retirement reserve, I'll just speak about that one allocation. In the years where we're seeing an increase in the rate of ERS and TRS, I do think it's appropriate to increase the appropriation, because that's really you establish it to help with the ebbs and flows of the increases and decreases. So in that way, I would say yes. In a year maybe where you'd have a decrease potentially, and we have seen that in either the amount we pay them, then I would say, okay, well, this year let's not use as much of that reserve. So that one's purposeful in a sense of that it's tied to the increase the rate of increase in both of those this year. We reserve the money for that express purpose. It went up, use a little bit more this year, going from 5 to 650. The last few years it has been up, and again, the state. I mean, I think the one thing with fund balance, just to be clear, I mean, the state does establish these fund balances, and there is a balance in some people could argue, well, that's too much or too little. I think, you have to look at it as a percentage of your overall budget. But again, the state does allow you to reserve for these amounts. And then if you don't, and you have no money, they're also critical of you of that. And also we know that in terms of our borrowing, that because they do look at the amount of money you have, and it helps us secure lower interest rates on borrowing. So it is a fine line with that. That being said, the recommendation this year was, just really, we had some things that we thought needed to be included in the budget, or we presented, and we were making some recommendations to pay for those with some of the appropriated fund balance. I mean, it wasn't so much that I'd be happy. I think there's plenty of reason to, hold on to some of the money, because we do have, as we spoke earlier, we do have some debt coming on. I think our fund balance level now, I feel comfortable like in and around. I don't want it to see it go much lower. I think we should be in the $8 million range to $10 million range for the size of our budget. Just to give you a sense, I know there was some question of other districts. Like, I do speak to my colleagues all the time. I can tell you that Ardsley currently has over $20 million worth of fund balance. Their budget is bigger, but they are also looking to add to that balance this year. So, I think, sometimes there's some conversation, people can look at it negatively. I mean, it is our savings account. And I would say that we were doing it because we felt we needed to balance our budget, really, because we had such a low tax cap this year. The appropriated fund balance was really trying to help restore some of those positions we felt that were taken last year. A lot of that appropriated fund balance is because we did get a restoration of our state aid this year. So we were trying to be fair and return some of that back. But certainly if we don't need it, my recommendation would be to restore some of the reserves that we're spending down this year, because if we don't do it, then we'll deplete them. So I know it's kind of a convoluted answer, but I'm trying to explain that it is always a fine balance. Like, I do think it's appropriate to give some back, not keep it all. Like, you could, I'm not suggesting we should have $15 million worth of reserves. So, but I think this year, yes, we were using a good amount of money, but we were really attempting to restore some of the positions that, well, in particular, the science position and some of the other line items with the Schedule Bs, we were able to restore. So.
But as it relates to fund balances, it's not like we have found money here. This is a budget where we are spending more than we are raising from the state and from our residents. So it's not like we have $500,000 to hand out to various priorities.
No.
We've already presented a budget that is going over our revenue from state and residents. And we have the fund balances so that we can occasionally prioritize some short-term needs.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah.
Right. So I would say I like the way you presented the three options. And I like the tax cap makes it so that you penalize yourself for being financially conservative. Is that sort of the same when we use our own reserves? Next year, if we were to fund this exact same budget, have we sort of set ourselves up for a trap as well.
Yes.
To fund a $53 million budget next year, by using reserves, we're not able to raise the tax rate next year either. We're
Right.
sort of committing to using reserves every year if we're going to maintain this level of not even increases, just this actual level at 53 million.
Yeah, no, that is a point, and that's a balance. Now, occasionally I could tell you and we could walk through, like, times I've worked here where it's both. There's times we've spent down our budget, which is actually not ever, and actually you get a negative audit when you do that, although you would think that's good. I mean, I think the idea is, they do expect you to have some money left at the end of the year. So yes, it is tricky if you are unable to appropriate that amount in the following year. So say next year we don't have as good, we don't have, we have the opposite. We're spending more money than we, initially had thought we were, and you're unable to appropriate that balance next year, or you have no monies to really pull from. Yes, then you are starting with a hole in your budget. And that's something, when we talk about the budget 101, I have shown that scenario and saying, listen, the appropriated fund balance is tricky. And actually, prior to COVID, we started to reduce that allocation, but unfortunately, like last year, we felt, we didn't want to, we used it to kind of plug some holes. But I do agree that it is something you have to be very, it's always a hard decision, like how much is the right amount. Like when you do, this year we did get some excess state aid in. Again, we've talked about that. We took the reduction. There was some restoration in the last stimulus money that gave us back state aid funds. So, I mean, some of that appropriated fund balance this year was really just that kind of restoration of some of those funds. But to your point, Jeremy, it is sort of like, if that money goes away, you have a hole in your budget. I mean, that's true. If we don't have the appropriated fund balance, year to year, most districts are going to have some money left over. I mean, that's just, on our plan, excuse me.
The appropriated balance is, sorry, a little different. I meant when we're using our reserves, the appropriated balance is whatever's left over year to year.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and we've seen as board members, we get to look at about 30 to 40 other districts. Like our closest, Dobbs Ferry, they pretty much shoot for a 0 every year on the appropriated balance. But there are a lot of districts like ourselves that like to have some money left over. I was speaking more to the reserves.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So the reserves,
last year,
if we don't replenish them, then they're going to go away. Yes.
And last year we used 500,000 from the retirement reserve. Would you be by memory? When's the last time we didn't use any reserves? We just use appropriated balance. Would that have been 2 years ago?
Oh, no.
Or is that not easy to come out with? We use a little bit of reserve funding every year.
Yeah, we do. We've used it. We've used different levels. Like I said, obviously the fund, the last couple of years, well, last year because of COVID, we use it. And obviously, I've been here. Well, the reserves for the retirement reserve haven't always existed. So since they were established, we've used it, but at different rates each year, depending on what the increase has been to us. So we have consistently used it. We use it sort of based on what we need, or the way the rate shifts. But it is something we have to be mindful of. I mean, the idea is that if the rate hopefully starts to go in the other direction, then we can pull, we won't need it. I think the idea of setting up that reserve, the state allowed the districts including themselves, because they're allowed to have a retirement reserve as well, I think, was to deal with the ebbs and flows of the retirement systems. And that's what we have been using it for. But we have been using it, and we will, we will need it if the rate continues to go up. It's important to have some money for that purpose. But we have consistently relied on it. But I think it is I think the other pieces, Jeremy, I can tell you, before these reserves, and anyone who does this, works doing these jobs, will tell you this. And again, I appreciate your saying about other schools, but again, like every school looks at things differently. Some schools, they rather spend down money if they have it, so that they have no money left. And I think what we do is we don't spend it, we save. I mean, we're more conservative in our spending. So sometimes a district spending all their money isn't necessarily, reflective of better financial planning. I would, argue that it's sort of like every district is always going to have savings. If they decide just to spend it on something else so that they have no money left over at the end of the year, doesn't necessarily, reflect a good financial planning. But
No, it's definitely just a choice of how you run it. We
Yeah.
tend to have about $1.5 million extra every year, and we
Right.
don't adjust the budget.
Right.
We tend to have $300,000 extra above salaries, and so we pay down reserves, and then we appropriate balance. We can put it back where we want.
Right.
I appreciate that. I was just going to add one. I didn't catch all of the beginning of the meeting.
Oh, sorry.
And I did just want to, we did have some residents that asked in these virtual meetings, they can't tell how many participants are out there. So if I'm just being repetitive at all, not like we're a Donald Trump looking for ratings, but at the moment there are 17 people who would be in the room with you if you are one of the people watching. It's 11 presenters and 17 or 16 people watching. But Maureen, thank you for that.
Yeah. So like I said, I think, the good news is that we, what I'm thinking, and again, moving forward is that once we have a really good understanding of how we can use those funds, I think there will be opportunities to either probably reduce, quite frankly, our overall proposed budget, because some of those funds would be appropriate, like I had mentioned, to either offset some of those COVID-related expenses, things that we have already factored into our expenditure budget. So I think what I'm anticipating is that our overall preliminary budget, and again, if I'm as the way say reading people correctly, I think we're going to be moving forward right now and with either just the restoration of the science program in terms of the spending. We're going to look to see if there's items that, whether it be technology things, like I know in just reading it, there may be an ability to offset some of the expenses on either purchases that we've had to make, softwares, training, things like that. If there's things that either can be moved out of the expenditure budget and placed in those grant funds that we think is appropriate, that are going to be appropriate use of those funds, then we'll be able to further reduce our preliminary budget, which I think is important, because I think the sustainability we of course are always concerned about as well, because certainly, we don't want to, as it's lovely to add things, but we don't want to add things that we can't afford in the out years. So that's kind of how we approached, in looking at the new funds we're receiving and looking at our budget proposal, and some concerns about not so much next year, but the year after. So I think that's what you'll be seeing reflected Monday when we continue our budget discussions. And I'll also be able to, kind of Jeremy and Doug's point, present some, we can look again at those 5-year, I think those 5-year projections, again, they're just a projection, and certainly there's many things that can change, but I do think it's important when we're considering, to Jeremy's point, maybe use of reserves, to Doug's point, how do we look at that property tax levy and make sure that whatever we do now is not going to, hurt us as we think about those out years, because it is important to consider that each year does have a ripple effect on the next. Use of reserves, the amount of the budget, the ability to either continue to sustain that by just using both the state aid and the property taxes is definitely an important component of thinking about what our final budget proposal is. So we will, present those updates to you on Monday. And I don't know if there was anything else that anyone wanted to discuss.
Yeah, thank you, Maureen. I wanted to also just ask that in preparation for Monday, if the enrollment numbers at Hillside could be more firmed.
Yep,
I think that
absolutely.
Kindergarten has completed their traditional window of kindergarten enrollment. I know that families continue to enroll throughout the summer, but if we can consider whether or not it makes sense for that expense of $125,000 for the additional faculty member at Hillside, I think that will be, a component that I'd like to have us consider. And I do want to state that reinstating the science position is something that I'm in support of. But I do want to know if it makes sense to include that Hillside faculty member or not.
Okay.
Lauren, I can add that I do have firm numbers as of now in terms of students who are physically seated in the building that we're anticipating moving up. I think the challenge with this year is that COVID created additional restrictions with registration. So it's very tricky. So if we're looking at the birth projections, we're seeing actually almost double than what we're seeing in our actuals. And with kindergarten, we see with the actuals, usually at this time of the year, it is much lower anyway. But it's right now, looking at the disparity, it's almost half in terms of actual kindergarten registrations. Similarly, through first through fourth grade, we are anticipating that a number of families that were out and had withdrawn because of home instruction, or some families opted for pods, that, the actuals don't necessarily match our projections. What we've projected is that people will be returning. So the all-in will also help us to kind of sort that out. So I do have the actuals in terms of first grade next year. If we were just thinking about rolling the kindergartners up, like rolling the actual numbers of students up, we're looking at 94 in first grade, 89 in second, 125 in third, and 106 in fourth. And what I can say is that is super conservative considering who we lost moving into the pandemic. So, the real wild card right now is kindergarten, and that will be hard to control for.
I know, Melissa, that the caller also mentioned fifth grade looking very large. Is that at all a concern of class size there?
I can look into that. I didn't have that one at my fingertips, but I will look into the fifth grade.
I know that what we're projecting, and I think Melissa, just because I know we looked, because that was brought up and I actually did look into it. Currently that's a projection that, we don't have 145 fourth graders, but what it does reflect is we do have typical year-over-year growth, because fifth grade, although not traditionally for other districts, is an entry point to middle school for us. So what we typically see from fourth to fifth grade is we usually have like 5 or 6 new children that begin. So I think our current enrollment may be closer to like 139. But again, as we always do, we project based upon historical trends, because that's how our system looks at the last 5 years and projects the average of those increases. So, I believe as of today, we don't in fact have 145 today children that are moving up to the fifth grade. The number is actually lower, but I think, again, as we do our budget, we use our projections. As we get closer, and it would be appropriate for us to look at that again and tighten it up before we move forward. But it is always good to keep in mind, because unfortunately some of the numbers are cuspy, and when we get kids over the summer, we like to at least put it on there on the radar, just like this could potentially be when we're looking at our sections. But I think we can look into that number a bit more. And if we're not seeing any growth, Melissa, like we may see growth typically at this point. If we're not seeing anything, maybe we are more comfortable saying, hey, it's probably going to be 140. I'm just, saying it may not be, we may not reach that typical threshold we do. So that also was based on a projection, just to be clear, the 145, not actual kids right now.
Maureen, on Monday, can you also bring just the review of the reserves?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, that's 100%, I think, important, because as part of this time of year, Doug, and I think I remember doing it last year, and I was thinking about it earlier. This year has been different because I feel like every time, we're still kind of spending on some things as part of our reopening, but this is the time of the year where I say, okay, we need to appropriate X amount to this, to this reserve base to close our books for this year. So I wanted to also start talking about that. So as part of the budget process, I'll put that together.
Okay. Great.
What we're anticipating, where we'll end this year, where we started, where we'll end.
Thank you.
Maureen, at the risk of being repetitive, I just wanted to express my appreciation to you in terms of your willingness to be responsive to the concerns that were expressed to you by trustees, because I think that, you know, the fact that we do have like a change from year to year of 1.6 million, and it's easy to get seduced by the fact that you hear you're receiving this additional aid, you know, whether it's from the state or from the federal entities, but in reality, it's a one-shot deal. We have no idea what we're heading into next year. And so while I think people's instinct might be that it's good to take that infusion and to spend it, that doesn't seem to be at least the conservative instinct that resonates with me. I feel like it's, you know, the only thing that I am on board with is restoring the science position. Anything beyond that just seems much more expansive than I would feel comfortable with. But I look forward to learning a lot more in explicit detail on Monday. But I know that you all go through these numbers in a very methodical way. So thank you. And thank you for listening to us, because I do know that, you know, we pour over the numbers in, you know, in the best way that we can, and to be responsive to the community at large. But I know that you two, I mean, not you two, but all of you also take what we say into account. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah. I think it is. I mean, this is part of the budget process. I mean, we do present things, and, you know, it does reflect as we, you know, we do work with all the building people and some of these things. And again, it is a process. And as you can see, I mean, the fact that we just got a new state aid number, you know, we've been working on this budget really since November, and we just sort of got what our state aid is going to be for next year last night. So, you know, it's a moving document until the board adopts it. And we're always understand that, and things change, and like, especially like there's like enrollments, like Melissa said, we may have better information than we had when we began this process and you know, putting our enrollment numbers together in January. So we're always going to, as we get more information or feel more comfortable, you know, we'll always look to make those adjustments. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that I think that there's an instinct that people have to hear, like, we have more cold hard cash, when in reality, if we're starting from a negative,
right,
we're not anywhere further ahead. We still need to be conservative, and, you know, we have a fiduciary duty to be responsible with the money that's, you know, being spent at our discretion and in service to the community. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we'll also have our debt numbers available.
Right.
Are there any other questions or comments regarding this new information or items that you'd like that would be helpful in preparation for Monday regarding the budget work session?
Yeah, definitely. As we head towards Monday, because I think it's a challenging situation. We tend to give teachers 4% raises every year. We tend to see in health insurance costs go up about 4%, retirement 4%. And our community has bought into a 2% idea for how much their taxes should go up every year. So obviously that is a mismatched game. So 80% of our budget goes up 4% a year, and our community wants to see 2% raises. So at the moment, we're about 1% away, $500,000 from that very difficult number to hit, Maureen. But for Monday, if there's a way that you could bring to us of the amount that Sylvia described as a negative amount, you know, we are spending more than we're bringing in. If you could possibly break down how much is any of that have a temporary nature to it, or is most of it really feel like a year that these are normal operating expenses that don't seem like pulling back? So I know maybe Melissa would be able to help with which type of licenses or resources we grabbed for this COVID 18 months tier and might be pulled away. But if there's any way to break that down, that sure, we're in negative territory whenever we go over 2% revenue and all that. But if there's certain expenses that we could see as being maybe a 1 or a 2 year and not as a long-term priority of the district, that puts us in at a balance, something challenging like that might help on Monday for me.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that makes sense. And there are some items that come to mind, and we'll present those, because there are definitely even items that are in this upcoming budget that I believe will not be there the following cycle. So I think it's good to kind of break those out because that is not a recurring expense, and that's important to as we think about the budget. So I think we have our homework for Monday. I think and if there's anything else that people would like presented, certainly you can email Valerie and myself and Melissa, and just, so that we have all the information that you may be and think will be helpful to you as we finalize kind of our budget proposal to move forward.
Thank you, Maureen and Valerie. And it's not even a Monday night board meeting, it's a Wednesday night board meeting, so you don't have a full week ahead.
That's fine. I think, like I said, the big challenge is really understanding the use of those federal funds. And I think once we have that information, then I think I'm pretty clear on the direction as far as what we've been proposing so far. And then that other information, I already have. So that's not terrible.
Well, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Maureen.
So we do have also a construction project update from you, Maureen.
Yeah, so let me just pull, it's a really quick, let me get out of this one. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, where am I? Go back to slides. Just give us, I just want to make sure I have the right presentation up. Okay, capital update, right? Okay. Then I'll share my screen. This is so much easier in person. There we go. Kidding. Where am I? Wait, I just had it. What the heck? Give me 1 second. I just pulled it up and now I'm not seeing it.
It's beautiful photos. You have to get to it. They framed out the whole concrete ditch there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's out there. You attached it already.
I did, but I think with Melissa, I usually just share my screen so that this way she doesn't have to toggle back and forth, So let me just see if I can. Yeah, it's just a couple things. I mean, we may not even, people can pull it up, but just, I know it's getting late, so maybe, just give me 1 more second.
No, pull it up.
Here we go. Did I hit share the screen? I'm sorry.
You've got it now.
Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. It's getting a little, at this time of night, I'm fading a bit, so sorry. Okay, capital update. This is it. Okay, so just very quickly, just a really quick, again, good news. Let's hope this continues in this direction. Cornice, this is a project on this building. The submittals for the work are now underway. And what that just really means is that the contractor is working with the architect to provide information in terms of the work and what they'll be using that will then, once it's approved by them, they can kind of move forward with the starting to get that work done. Oh goodness, I just typed this quick. District, we actually are going to receive, now that we've have our scope of work on that work, they are able to credit us $200,000 back on that contract. So this was the same contractor that we actually had to pay more to do some additional work here, but for this particular part of the work, we're actually, there's some work that now they're not required to do, as they had, after we did some probes, there was a better understanding of the work. And because the work that they initially had bid on was more expansive, and it is not needed, we're going to receive a $200,000 credit there, and that will begin at the end of the school year. So that's some good news to share. And this is just, I always think the pictures are really kind of cool, and we've been looking at the progress, and we'll continue to put these on the website so people can kind of look over the course of time how things developed. And as you can see here, again, they're getting ready, they're preparing the foundation. I'm trying to think, I think one of them, he showed me, and now I'm looking at what picture I'm at. There's one that you could actually see like the elevator shaft, and I'm not sure if I included that picture, but just, you can see the forms that they're creating, and they will start to pour the cement either Friday or Saturday of this week. So that foundation's going in, and all this, they're making great progress over there. And yeah, this one here again is a nice action shot of the gentleman there working on creating the footing form work. They've already, again, that continuation of that rebar install, which again is the material that's put in to help reinforce the concrete that is being poured, concrete footings and foundations. And during the break, the asbestos abatement was completed. And of course, the air testing as required was done and everything was clear. So we're happy to have that behind us. And they're continuing to make great progress. And of course, the weather has been cooperating. So that's just a very quick update on the capital work for this week. So that's it. And
Thank you, Maureen.
You're welcome.
So we do have some policies for our first read, and these are a result of the ongoing policy audit that has been provided to us from NISBA and has been guided by council. So Valerie, I don't know if you want to provide an overview. These are for the first read tonight for the board.
Sure. And I want to thank the policy committee, which includes Lauren Berman, Jeremy Gallen, Melissa Samansky, Melissa Della Barrera, Francesca Goodman, and myself. So these policies represent the compliance audit portion that our council goes through and pulls in the numerical orders in the different batches so that we can begin to whittle down that compliance audit with regards to the policies that do actually need our attention. So the ones that are on the board agenda for first read include the HIV related illnesses policy, that's policy 0150. What was added as a suggestion from council is that there should be a confidentiality section added to the existing policy. And that's to protect who actually has access to this information in the district, and it's to protect anyone who is HIV from having any information released to third party, to any kind of third party. It also stipulates what the penalty is, or that there will be some action for any breaches of confidentiality, as well as who or which individuals in the school district will actually have access to this information, and that individual would be the school nurse. And that any information about HIV status is not even kept in an employee's personnel file. It has to be kept in a completely different location. So this is a very important revision to policy 0150. The next policy is policy 0130, and it's the board self-evaluation policy. And what the policy committee recommended in terms of actual recommendation from our legal counsel, but what we felt we needed to do was to include in this policy that the board will use a self-evaluation instrument that may be digital. So it could be, print, or some kind of document that's generated by the board, or it could be an existing system that the board might want to explore. So we didn't have to specify what that system is, but just to make sure that it would be organized and archived and accessible, from year to year, so that, everyone could look back at and review, those particular evaluations of the board. And the self-evaluation would be completed before the annual reorganization meeting. So we felt that inserting that timeline was very important. The next policy is 0320, which is the evaluation of the superintendent. And at the suggestion of legal counsel, including that this review process happens no later than September 10th of each year was an important addition as she reviewed this policy and felt that was missing. Of course, the evaluation process is negotiated between the Board of Education and the superintendent. So there may be some other kinds of things which are, not represented, but that would be remedied through a conversation with the board, between the board and the superintendent. The next policy, policy 0100, which is equal opportunity and non-discrimination. What was really important and essential about this policy was the addition of language that indicated how staff, students, and members of our community with disabilities would be able to access the website. So it addresses specific issues related to perceivability, operability, and understandability principles. So the way in which information is organized, the way in which it looks, etc., color, characters, fonts, all of that is really essential when it comes to making sure that any member of our community, or as I said, staff member or student who has a disability, can access information on our website. So we felt that it was very important to follow council's advice and to insert that language. And finally, policy 8500, which is school food service program, lunch and breakfast. Not that our school district, and this is under the great and benevolent leadership of Maureen. We're certainly far away from being involved in any kind of food shaming practices. But it was important to add the language here because there are certain instances that I'm sure some of us have actually read about or seen on the news, where school districts in some parts of the country do in fact have a totally different meal option for children who don't have money to pay for their meals. And they are in a sense shamed because what they are eating is different from what their peers are eating. If they obtain something, they get to the register and find if there's no money on their account. In some districts, in some certain parts of this country, the food is removed, and the child gets something that is just demonstrably different from what their counterparts would eat. And it's done very publicly. So we inserted language just so that it's mainly just a matter of sort of our declaration that we don't engage in this behavior. And it indicates that, if a child does in fact have insufficient funds, that a reimbursable meal of the child's choice will be provided. Alternate meals will not be permitted. Snacks, which we know are popular for children as well as adults, will be permitted with the meal, and they may not be removed from a child's tray if a student's account has insufficient funds. Instead, what we'll do is work with the family to notify them that the account needs to be replenished, and if there are instances where there's a financial hardship, we'll help the family to complete a free and reduced meal program application, which is what again Maureen currently does throughout. So this language, again, is not because of any behavior associated with food shaming is occurring, but it's, as I said, to proclaim that we don't engage in this behavior. So that's the first read of this set of policies.
Thank you, Valerie. So these policies will appear again for a second read at our next board meeting, but certainly if board members have questions or thoughts about them, they can address the policy committee or bring them up at the next read at our next board meeting on April 20th. We now have time for a second public comment. This is a comment period where the public may address the board with any district business. The comments are limited to 2 minutes. If you could please state your name, and if you're a resident of Hastings, and you can use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of the screen, and Melissa De La Barrera will call on you.
I don't see any hands raised, Lauren.
Thank you, Melissa. And now we have time for Board of Education comments. I know, Jody, you had something you wanted to bring up, and if any other board members would like to make a comment, it's a good time to do that.
I actually don't want to speak now. I had wanted to speak earlier when there were more people, participants. I had wanted to talk about reference to a letter that I heard that was going to be coming out in the Enterprise. And I thought it was important for a lot of people to hear about it, but I'll bring it up at another time.
Are there any other thoughts from the Board of Education? I just want to close by giving gratitude to Valerie, Melissa, and Maureen, and to each of the principals and assistant principals at the schools, and all of the teachers and aides who have prepared and are preparing, and in particular our buildings and grounds and nursing staff who are prepared for the all-in schooling on April 12th, and for all the families and students to persevere through these past challenges and past months. And I just am incredibly grateful that we'll have opportunity for full in-person schooling for those who choose it beginning next week. So thank you all for all your fortitude and imagination and reserves of optimism to get us to this point, and for the health of our community to bring us here. Is there a motion to close the Board of Education meeting?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.